You must be able to distinguish your question from your thesis.
This is Learning with Landon.
Writing an essay is hard. It's like carefully choreographing a dance of thoughts so that the words' footsteps leave the audience with a coherent message that moves it. I recently had to write a 7-page research paper for college, and I want to walk you through the thought processes I employed so that your essay writing experience is 14.71253 times easier than mine. 'Cause math. And before I begin, I want to note that although I'm going to be explaining how to write a 7-page research paper, the fundamentals remain consistent no matter what type or length of essay that you have to write. So, let's make you a pro of the pen. The first step to writing an essay is understanding what your instructor wants you to learn from the assignment and the grading rubric. These parameters create the boundaries that you get to work within. Here comes the most important part of the essay writing process. The step which many forget or get confused about that turns a could-be masterfully crafted essay into, well, this. Yeah. So pay attention. At the beginning of this video, I said that you must be able to distinguish your question from your thesis. A question is obviously something you're asking and want an answer to. Meanwhile, your thesis is a claim. It's an argument you make, which usually appears at the end of your introductory paragraph, and is backed up throughout the body of your essay. For persuasive essays, a thesis statement makes sense, but its purpose in, for example, a research paper often seems murkier to students. But even well-written research papers contain a claim that you advocate for while explaining a foreign topic to your audience. Here's an example from an essay about why water is not wet. As you can see, the thesis has a clear argument to make. It's trying to convince you that water is not wet. How does it go about doing that? By listing 3 facts that support its argument. Those 3 pieces of supporting evidence will be further explained in 3 body paragraphs, therefore guiding the direction of the essay. Your entire essay revolves around your thesis. But that begs the question, how do I discover my thesis? Especially if I'm writing about a topic I just don't know well. Yes, that's exactly the issue I faced when writing my essay on an early 5th century theological debate called the Pelagian controversy, which I knew little to nothing about before my research. So how do I create an argument for something I know practically nothing about? And here's where most students go wrong. They write an introduction that leads up to presenting their question. Then they write their body paragraphs to answer that question throughout the paper. Do you see the issue? They have a half-baked essay that merely compiles related facts to shed a light on a topic somewhat similar to how an objective news article should look like. But that's not the entire goal of writing an academic paper. You have to display a deeper understanding of the subject by applying those facts to supporting your thesis, your argument. Here's my example. On top, you see my question. And on bottom, that's what my thesis looks like. A masterful essay answers your question while also advancing your claim. Returning to my essay, my question is 2-part. What was the Pelagian controversy, and how were St. Augustine's theological beliefs shaped as a result of it? I could have just described what transpired during the debate and listed Augustine's actions during it. But that paper would have lacked a thesis. So instead, I answered my 2-part question with the research I gathered to support my claim. Now is a good time to explain how I decided upon my thesis, and didn't instead argue something like, the Pelagian controversy transformed Augustine into a radically different person. My secret? I didn't begin writing until I had over 7 pages of research on my topic in a bullet-pointed format. If your essay is purely your own thoughts, then bullet point any ideas firing across your neural synapses until you see the direction you want your essay to take come into view. I continued my research until I saw a commonality between what my different sources said about Augustine's beliefs before the Pelagian controversy and towards the end of his life. This step may just be the longest of the entire essay writing process, but it's also where your thesis should come solidly into view, which makes your entire essay so much easier to write moving forwards. Only after I had a possible thesis did I begin to write my essay. In my opinion, the best opening hook is the one that causes your audience to ask a question, meaning you've captivated their attention. My hook starts out broad by hinting that Augustine played a major role in Christian history. Therefore, the reader will ask, well, how did he do that? Then I take a step back and provide context by describing who Augustine was and what the Pelagian controversy was about. Afterward, I conclude my introductory paragraph by adding my thesis so that my audience knows where I'm heading. I'll be arguing why Augustine's views were not influenced much by the Pelagian controversy. Now comes the relatively easy part. Blending your research with your own original commentary to support your claim while also answering your question. That may sound difficult, but it's simple because all the information you need to support your claim is already in that bullet-pointed list you created earlier. You possess all the pieces to the puzzle. All that's left are your original thoughts to snap the pieces together and reveal the big picture. This is an example of me blending 2 quotes from one of my sources, explaining them in my own words, and finally tying their meaning back to my thesis, thus supporting it. I repeat this process until I have a sufficient amount of supporting evidence. Finally, the conclusion. A good conclusion summarizes your argument and supporting evidence in a new way, either by using synonyms, changing sentence structure, or both. Just make sure you don't add any new information in your concluding paragraph. And lastly, like putting a bow on a present, leave your audience with a closing hook that invites further contemplation or action to be taken. Notice the difference between my thesis statement that says Augustine's views were further cemented by the Pelagian controversy, largely unaffected by his opponents unto his grave. And then when I reiterate it in my concluding paragraph, saying Augustine's beliefs became more evident to him and those around him as time passed, further solidifying his theological perspective rather than rattling it. I'm not adding new information and changing what I say. I'm changing how I say it, thus keeping it fresh. And that's how to write a proficient essay. No matter what type you have to write, you now have the fundamentals to create a dance of diction that points in a unified direction. As always, ad meliora, toward better things.
Oh, you're still here? After listening to that guy? Wow, props to you. Well, if you made it this far, why don't you teach the like button a lesson and subscribe? Because that's what I prescribe. Now get back to your homework.